Welcome back to the series. We have installed Node.js in the first episode. In this second episode, we are going to see what are all the things that you need to build this REST API in Node.js with MongoDB as a database. Yes, there are some things which very obvious and very simple, and you can skip those sections. Those are for beginners. And there are some things which you might not know. You can go to those sections directly. So without further delay, let's get started. The first obvious thing that you need to develop all these is the editor. So VSCode is my favorite, and also this is from Microsoft. So you can Google and you can go to their site and download it. If you are, I'm using Mac here. If you are using Windows, it's the same process. Go to their site and hit the download button, and once it's downloaded, you can open it. You can install and open it. And I think it has so many plugins and it has so many extensions. There are so many other editors as well, but this is one of my favorite. And also let me show you one of the coolest thing here, which is the color theme. As you can see, you can actually change the theme of the VS Code. So like this, there are so many things that you can do with the VS Code because there are so many extensions and there are so many plugins that you can install. And yeah, it's very cool. So the way you create your first file is go to your file, new create file, and do index.js or you can name any file name and create it. That's it. Installing an editor is done. So the next thing that you need on your laptop is JavaScript. So you don't need to install anything for JavaScript because it actually runs on the web. But first you need to be familiar with JavaScript before the Node.js. So let's do that. The JavaScript is a programming language where you can use for both front-end and back-end. So if you search JavaScript in Google, there are so many resources, and you can again open W3 Schools and you can go through all the basics. So JavaScript is a scripting language that is mainly used for web browser in the beginning, but we can also use JavaScript on the server side, which is Node.js. So let's go to some of the sample documents here. So if you look at it, we have a functions, events, data types. There are so many things here. So if you notice, all the JavaScript is placed under script tag, and the script tag should be placed in the body. So let's go to our code and let's start with script tag. Okay, and then whatever you put it here, it will be executed. Browser will execute it, and also console log statements will be executed, and you can the console.message, whatever the message you put, that will be displayed under console here. So we have put hi welcome. You can actually see hi welcome there. And then let's define some code here. So there are two functions from JavaScript where set interval and set timeout. Let's use set timeout. So set timeout is a function. It executes the block of code after certain interval. So here the interval is 3 seconds. So whatever you put in the function, so all that block of code will be executed after some delay. So here the delay is 3000. So what we are doing here, so we are fetching the hello h1 heading by id. So here hello is the id. So we are fetching that element and we are changing the background color of this particular h1 heading. So I'm going to put some brown, let's say brown, and let's copy the same name, same line, and put it again, and copy the welcome ID from the paragraph, and let's have this as white, and let's reload the page. If you notice, after 3 seconds delay, you can actually see background changes. So so that that kind of interactivity you can get it from JavaScript. In JavaScript there are so many things. You can have functions, you can write, I mean all the interactivity you can do with your web pages, you will write all that in the JavaScript. There is another programming language that you can use for building full stack web applications, which is the TypeScript. So TypeScript is very similar to JavaScript with better tooling and strong types. So if you are starting web development now, I would suggest you to start with TypeScript because it comes with a lot of other features as well. So let's go to the TypeScript website where you can actually see all the definitions, and also if you look at the site, it can have all the options like interfaces, JSX. So if you are building React application, you can actually see JSX also comes with TypeScript support. So let's click on the playground. So let's see the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript. You can actually choose which version you want to use on the left drop down. So I want to try simple interface where I want to define the simple interface called person, and which has first name and last name. So in JavaScript, you have to define, you can directly assign an object to a person, but in TypeScript, you can actually define what are the fields that person contain. For example, here first name and last name are the fields that person can have. So that's why I defined a type called person, and then I'm actually creating an object of type person. So in this way, TypeScript has very strong types where there won't be any confusion when you write the code, and also there won't be any compilation errors as well. And let's see how it compiles. Let's add a console statement where I can just log this person object. So I would like to run it. So when I run this, I can actually see the log statement, and let's click on the JS where you can actually see the JavaScript version of the TypeScript. If you compare, it's very similar, but TypeScript comes with a lot of types and better tooling. So we have seen key technologies to build the systems, but these systems has to communicate with each other. Otherwise, there is no use. So that's where the JSON comes into picture. So JSON is open standard file format to transfer the data among systems. So you should be very familiar with JSON because any modern web applications will produce JSON as an output, and it will consume JSON as an input. If you go to W3 schools, you can actually see lot of objects, data types, object methods, and also you can actually see the comparison between JSON and XML. XML is another format where you can transfer the data among systems, but JSON is the lighter version of it. So let's see an example of JSON. First name and last name is a key value pairs. Those are just fields, and address is another key, but value can be object, and also value can be an array. So you can put objects inside array like phone numbers. So I mean you can create structure like this. You can create nested structure like this, and the JSON structure can be bigger as well. So in this full stack web application, your front end has to talk to your Node.js backend. So front end can be Angular application, React application, or Vue.js application. It can be anything, but these front end and backend has to talk with each other so that they can transfer the data among themselves. So that's where the JSON comes into picture. Here, front end makes the API call to the backend, and backend will send the response to the front end as in the JSON format. Until now, we have seen front end side of things. Let's look at the backend as well. The first thing to look at is Node.js. So Node.js is the JavaScript runtime which runs on the server. So there is an entire episode dedicated to this, how to install NVM and how to install Node.js through NVM. Remember, you have to install NVM first, then through NVM you have to install Node.js. Otherwise, I mean, you can, if you are running only one application, that's fine. But if you are running multiple applications and each application needs a different version of Node.js, it is very difficult to manage. So install NVM and then install Node.js through NVM. So installing Node.js is not enough. So you might need to consider having a framework called express.js. So if you are building a small scale application, that's fine, you can manage with just Node.js. If you want to build large scale web applications, you might need express.js framework or any other framework. But in this episode, in this tutorial, we are going to use express.js since it is very minimal and flexible Node.js web application framework that actually provides a robust set of features for both web and mobile applications. So what it means is, if you want to, your backend will receive the requests, you need to send the responses, you need to create routes, you need to define other stuff, you need to make API calls from your backend. So all these things can be managed by Express framework. So it's very easy to install. If you have Node.js in place, all you need to do is run this command npm install express save. So as you can see, it can be used for both web applications and you can build APIs, and it is very performance oriented, and also a lot of popular frameworks is using this. Let's take a look how it looks in the actual application. So if you go to the API and if you go to the package.json, so basically if you install express.js, you will find it under dependencies. And if you go to server.js, you can actually see the import command with require. And once it is imported, you need to define, and you need to assign it to app variable, and also you need to define all your routes as you see here. Now with the help of Node.js and express.js, you build your API. So once you build the API, you need to test your API because your front-end code will call the API. So before you even give this API to the front-end users or front-end consumers, you need to test your API. So Postman is the platform to design, build, and test your APIs. So you need to install this Postman. So if you go to this page, you can actually see the download buttons. When you download and install it, it actually looks like this. And you can even see HTTP webs, all the webs, get, post, all those, and you can put the URL there. And if you are making a post call, you can put the body here based on the API. So you can send query params as well. So let's test one API, which is public API. JSON placeholder is the public API. Let's hit it. If you call this API through browser, you can actually see the whole result. So let's copy it and test it through Postman. So you can see the response here, and if you pass 1, you can get only one response, one object in the response. So that way it will be easy for you to test your APIs with Postman. So this is the tool you might consider installing on your local machine. And while testing, you might need to make so many changes to your API and test it again. So every time you make some changes and you cannot restart the whole thing again and again. So for that, you might need to consider installing this nodemon. So what is this nodemon does is, it actually watches your files and it reloads the server automatically. You don't have to reload and you don't have to do anything else. All you need to do is you make changes on your file and you save it. As soon as you save it, it watches and it will actually reloads the server, so that all the data that all the changes that you've done will be automatically reflected on the API. So go to the nodemon page and you can install globally with this command. Or if you want to install only dev, you can check the second one. And let's go back to our example project where we are using nodemon in package.json. So since it is only used for development environment, you can actually see for the dev command we are using nodemon, and it is watching the server.js, and also it is watching on the port 3080. And so basically you can make the changes anywhere. It actually looks all the changes and it actually reloads the whole API so that you don't have to reload or restart again and again. While developing the APIs, you might need to consider externalize all the API secrets or keys from the application code. So without doing that, it is very difficult for you to deploy the API code in different environments. So for this purpose, while developing the API, you might need to consider using this .env library. So what it actually does is, it actually has the file called .env. It takes all the variables from .env file and inject those variables through process.env so that you can read it from that object in the application code. So now let's look at the download page, npm.js page, where you can install .env, and also you can actually see the usage as well. All you need to do is create the .env file and also put this line in the application code. So let's go to package.json in the example project where we install .env and also go to the server.js. If you notice line number 8 or 9, we are doing this only when the environment is not production. So that means we can only use this in the development environment. And go to the .env file. So this is how you actually define key value pairs. We are defining Mongo connection string here. And the way we read this variable is, if you go to the config.js, dbconfig.js, notice the line number 6 and 7, we are reading through process.env object. So now, until now we have seen the tools for building and testing the APIs. So when it comes to large web applications, the most important tier or the most important thing is the database and is your data. So you need to save your data somewhere. That's when the MongoDB comes into picture. So MongoDB is general purpose document based distributed database, which is predominantly built for modern web applications. So let's go to the MongoDB community page or MongoDB official page where you can see installation instructions. So if you do not want to install MongoDB on your local machine, you can actually choose MongoDB Atlas, which is the cloud solution, or you can install MongoDB Community Edition, and here there are all the options based on your mission. If you are Linux based or if you are Windows based on that you can select. So since I am Mac, here so these are the instructions for Mac here, and these are the instructions for Windows, and you can even install MongoDB through Docker as well. So, and that is for installation of MongoDB, and you need to install MongoDB Driver in your application code by command npm install MongoDB. So let's go ahead and look at the code as well. So go to the package.json. In the package.json, if you look at the MongoDB, we have installed MongoDB Driver 3.6.3, and this is the configuration file. Don't worry about it right now since we have a dedicated episode for it. So let's get into another tool called Mongoose. So since MongoDB is not schema based, it is very difficult for you to maintain large scale web applications when you have a large amount of data that you need to deal with. So for that, Mongoose is a tool which makes the interaction easy with MongoDB, and you can actually define schema with Mongoose, and also it is very easy to query, and it helps you to query better as well. So we will look at it in detail in the next episodes, but let's look at how to install, and let's look at a sample code for now. So here is a installation page where you can install through npm, and here is a getting started, how you can import Mongoose and how you can connect. So here is an example code. Go to the package.json, where in which you can actually install Mongoose, and also in the configuration file we imported Mongoose, and also we have connected to the database through Mongoose. So look at the model in which we have defined the schema here, and with the schema we are able to query the model. So we have seen how to install MongoDB and MongoDB JS driver in the application code. But what if we want to see the data from the MongoDB database, and also if we want to query the data? So that's when the graphical user interface for MongoDB comes into picture, which is MongoDB Compass. So from the official documentation as well, we can install MongoDB graphical user interface, which is MongoDB Compass. So when you download and install it, it looks like this one. So you can provide the URL. If your MongoDB up and running, you can provide the URL there, and you can connect through here, so that you can actually see the data and query the data. When it comes to shipping your code into production, so you cannot place all your files into the server one by one. You have to bundle your stuff. So that's when the bundler Webpack comes into picture. So it actually bundles all the dependencies and files into static assets. If you look at this, their documentation, what actually does is it actually combines all the files and its dependencies into single static assets. So if, for example, if you have multiple JS files, it actually combine all the JS files into one JS file, so that you can actually place only one JS file into the server. If you go to the docs, you can actually see there, all you need to define is entry point and the output file. So Webpack reads the entry point and it compiles all the code and put it into one output file. So we have a webpack config.js in the example project, where we are defining entry point server.js, because that is our entry point, and we have defined the output file name, which, so the whole API code will be combined and put into this API bundle.js. And also when it is being built, all the environment variables are actually injected into the build code, so that it can be deployed into multiple environments based on the environment. Deploying containerized applications in production is very popular now. So whenever you ship your app into production, you can create an image, Docker image, and you can deploy this Docker image anywhere. So what it means is, so you have a front end and back end, and you bundle all your code into one package, and you create a Docker image out of this package, and you once Docker image is available, you can actually run the Docker image anywhere as long as Docker runtime is available. So let's go to the Docker page, where it mentions develop faster and you can run anywhere. Let's go to the docs. So in the docs, you can go to get started page, where you can see, if you are not familiar, you can check all the docs here. So let's go to Docker file in our example project. So if you look at it, we are building multi-stage Docker images. What it means, you build each stage one by one, and then you take all the outputs from each stage and put only those outputs in the final stage. That way we can reduce the image size. So with Docker, we can only create one image, and you can run the container out of that image. But what happens if you want to create multiple containers, run multiple containers with single command, or you can kill all the containers with single command. So imagine if you are running your front end and back end and database um, with different Docker images and different containers, and every time you want to start your whole application, you have to create image from each, and also you need to run the container from each, and you need, whenever you want to kill the application, you want to kill all these images. So that's when the Docker Compose is really useful, when you want to run multi-container applications with single command, or you want to kill multiple container services with single command. So let's go to their docs. In the docs, you can actually see how to install Docker Compose, how to create Docker Compose file, and the services. All that jargon you can find it out in this page. So in our let's go to our example project in which we have defined Docker Compose YAML file at the root. If you look at the YAML file, we have defined multiple services here. We have defined UI service, API service, and DB service. All these services can be run with single command. All these services can be killed with a single command. So that is the advantage of Docker Compose.